The buzz around the NBA continues as we get some more news there. The MLB season's hot and heavy halfway through August, and we got the NFL preseason to recap. This is the Next Best Bet, episode 158. I'm Jake Higgins with Brett Levy, as always. Quick recap of how we did last episode, Brett, and I closed in another half game on you on the Levy lock pick of the pod. I got my win with the Giants minus 1.5 at plus 130. That was the only bet that I won, though, because the Yankees money line, the Field of Dreams game, it was fantastic. A walk-off homer by Tim Anderson. That's what screwed me over in the end, and I can deal with that. But overall, a 1-2 day for me last episode, but not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad, Higgins. I did the reverse. I won my two other bets, lose the Levy lock, but it's okay. It was a worse weekend for Ricky Fowler than it was for me. So, like I said on the last episode, we could live with it. We were taking Ricky to pretty much just make the cut. Higgins was kind of like my read on it, and then I could only bet the top 20 market. So that's what I did. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately for Ricky, he was nowhere near the cut. So it didn't even matter that top 20 bet.
Did not make the cut is right, and actually there were 74 golfers that were trying to make that cut, that made that cut anyway, so it would have still been quite the fight for top 20. But Brett, you are 2-0 in the NFL preseason, and that's despite me breaking the pillars in a sense on Saturday because I tweeted out the under on the Washington-New England game, same as you had, but we got lucky, we got fortunate, the pillars didn't fall. Let's jump into our Beginner's Boulevard, though, and talk about a mush, because that's kind of almost what happened. I almost mushed the scenario, and that's when a bettor or a gambler comes in and causes some bad luck. That would have been a no-go, Brett.
Yeah, we call this a Higgins in our group chat. But yeah, a mush. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll let you think it's called a mush, Higgins.
That's what the dictionaries on the internet call them, and this is a term that extends beyond just sports betting, though. It's just gambling in general. Like, if you're at a blackjack table and there's that one guy that just doesn't know how to play blackjack and they're hitting on all the wrong times, they're being a mush. They're being a mush. So a mush can be a noun, it can be a verb. It's a bit of a wide berth of a usage for this word, but it generally just means a gambler or a scenario that's bad luck or a jinx in a sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of a it's more to help you go to bed that night than an actual thing, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a superstitious term, for
Yeah.
sure. Let's jump into our baseball, though, Brett. Talk about some games going on Monday, and I'll start us off here. We have the Braves in Miami facing off against the Marlins. We got Tuki Toussaint on the mound against Braxton Garrett, and I am going to be backing the hometown guys. I'm going to back the Marlins, who are 30-27 at home this season, compared to a Braves team that's 31-27 on the road. So they got comparable records in this scenario. But Braxton Garrett's the bit of the wild card here because he's only got 31 innings pitched. He's never faced off against the Braves before. Toussaint's a little bit more known of an arm on the Braves end. And I like the way the Marlins have actually been playing recently. They won 3 straight. They got one of their wins against the Padres, got 2 against Chicago, and then actually they won 4 straight because they finished off the sweep against Chicago on Sunday, excuse me. So yeah, Marlins as the underdogs at plus 135. I really like that because also if you look at them on the run line, if you look at them on the run line as underdogs, they're 45-33 on the year. So I really like the Miami Marlins in this underdog scenario.
Yeah, I am gonna stay away from this game, Higgins, because I have no interest in betting on or against Braxton Garrett. I know nothing about him. Tuki Toussaint's rebounded a little bit this year, looked pretty good for the Braves. Braves getting a little healthy with their pitching staff, Higgins. Who Oscar is expected back soon, so the Braves could really make a run here in the NL East. I think they need every game, so I would lean Atlanta, unfortunately for you, but good news, I have no strong feelings on this one, Higgins, so I'm staying off and just rooting for you to beat the books at plus 135.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I like that line at plus 135 too, because I feel like it's going to dip back down. It's going to be a little bit more close to a pick me game by start time. Another game that I'm going to be on, Brett, is going to be the run line. And if you just look at how these two teams have done so far this year, it's pretty obvious. We have the Baltimore Orioles heading to Tampa Bay to face off against the Rays. Tampa, they are the sixth best team in the MLB against the run line at 65 and 53. Meanwhile, Baltimore, they are the second worst team against the MLB, 47 and 69 on the year. So you're giving me Baltimore and Tampa, or Baltimore versus Tampa Bay, where the Rays are minus 1.5 favorites at plus 115 odds. I really like that, especially when you take the time to look at their past 10 games and you look at the fact that Baltimore has not won a run line in their past 10 games. So recent history, Baltimore's going through a bit of a slump there. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay, they're 6 and 4 in their past 10 run lines. So I like this scenario of Tampa Bay at home. They need this win in the AL East to continue staying atop the division, as they still got a 3-game lead over Boston. Baltimore is going to be the punching bag for the rest of the season. However, Baltimore's going to try to play spoiler in their own division. I just don't think they're going to do it on Monday.
Yeah, Higgins, if I had to guess why the lines are the way they are, I would guess it has to do with Colin McHugh being the projected starter for Tampa Bay. He's primarily a relief pitcher, Higgins, so don't expect more than 2 innings out of him. And then, it's a complete bullpen game. Who knows what'll happen? That all that being said, I wouldn't really back Matt Harvey either. So this was another no bet for me. I would, definitely lean the Tampa Bay side. I think you're on the right side here. I think you gave a lot of good reasons to back Tampa Bay, but the unknown with how they're going to pitch the whole game is a lot to piece together. And if they start down early, it gets rough in some of these bullpen games if you're down after the first 2 innings.
Yeah, that's understandable. McHugh, as a reliever, has faced off against Baltimore 4 times this season in some capacity, so a little bit familiar with their lineup, and that means that they're a bit familiar with him as well, so we'll see what that means. Brett, I have one last baseball game to talk about as well. Cleveland versus Minnesota. If we take a look at how these two teams have done on the over-unders this year, which this game, it's set at 10. If you look at how they've done on their over-unders, both these teams are fantastic. Minnesota is the best in the MLB at hitting over 69, 44, and 5. And then you look at Cleveland. Cleveland's done pretty well for themselves as well. Fourth in the MLB, 63, 49, and 4. Both of these teams have a win percentage on overs that is over 55%. So I'm going to be taking over 10, especially when you actually take a look at this game and you look at the fact that it's Cal Quantrill on the mound for Cleveland, Griffin Jax on the mound for Minnesota. These are guys that have an ERA over 3 and over 5, respectively. I don't really expect the defenses to be too much of an impact in this game. I think it's going to be all bats, all sluggerfest, and in Minnesota, those balls can fly.
Yeah, well, we will definitely see what happens there. I think you're right. Could be a lot of runs in that one, Higgins. I'm going to find myself on one game on Monday, Higgins. The Athletics take on the White Sox. Frankie Montas and Dallas Keuchel are the projected starters at this point. But Higgins, you beat me to the rundown today, so we got the Oregon odds in here. And I noticed something that in New Jersey, the White Sox are minus 116, Oakland's minus 102. But in Oregon, the White Sox are the dogs at plus 100. So I got to beat these New Jersey Bucks, beat the Oregon book, and get that Oregon line with a team that's clearly favored here on the East Coast as even money dogs out there on the West Coast. And lucky for me, I do a podcast with a person in Oregon. Maybe I can Venmo him $10. Maybe he can put that in his account for me and place a nice little wager for a friend.
Yeah, and good thing you did that. We were able to do that for each other because this line has already moved to minus 105 aside. So early line movement, sometimes good to get the early line, and we'll see what type of value you get with the closing line value, which was last episode's Beginners Boulevard term, if you remember that. But yeah, I really like that pick. Dallas Keuchel on the mound for the White Sox. The White Sox have just been cruising. But overall, that should be a good game because Frankie Montas on the mound for Oakland as well should be very interesting. That those two teams, excuse me, those two teams, both of them eyeing the playoffs. White Sox should have it. Oakland's eyeing it pretty hard though. We'll see if they can grab one.
Yeah, Oakland definitely needs these games, so it should be a good competitive series.
But Brett, let's jump into our moneyline magic now and let's talk about some NFL preseason because if you follow on Twitter, I found myself on a parlay on Saturday that was Cardinals money line. It was Cardinals baseball and Cardinals football money line. And so I was sweating out a last second scenario in week 1 of the NFL preseason, Brett. This this Cardinals game was absolutely insane. I mean, we got to talk about this one, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. If you're on a Cardinals preseason parlay, maybe we should have an intervention too. I don't know what we need.
Maybe a little bit, but so Dallas Cowboys, they came into town to face off against the Arizona Cardinals, and the Cardinals for the first 3 quarters, they pretty much held the lead for the majority of it. I mean, Matt Prater kicked a field goal, and then Dallas tied it up early on, but then the Cardinals scored, and they pretty much held the lead until the Cowboys scored on a 1 yard pass from Ben DiNucci to Brandon Smith, and that gave Dallas a 16-3 lead, which made this interesting because Cardinals hadn't trailed yet this season.
Yeah, very small sample
Had
size
not
there.
trailed yet this season.
That's a great stat. Thank you, Al Michaels.
But so the Cardinals then, they would march down a 9-play, 39-yard drive, and they tie it up with a Matt Prater 48-yard field goal. But Brett, it's important to note for these NFL preseason games, for anyone that might be betting on them, because I learned in this game, actually, that preseason games don't go to overtime. So if it's a tie, it's a tie. So there's no extra time that gets played, and it makes sense for the preseason. Something that I just never cared to really look at, to be honest. So find something new every day. So Cardinals, they kicked that game-tying field goal with 1:51 left in the game. Somehow they get the ball back with 51 seconds left. The Cowboys only wasted a minute of clock. Allow the Cardinals to drive 40 yards. Matt Prater kicks a 47-yard field goal. Just squeezes inside the left field goal post, like just barely. And the Cardinals win literally as time expires. It was a nail biter in the preseason, Brett.
Yeah, well, a few good things to note here, I guess. First being Matt Prater still in the league, kicking for the Cardinals. So maybe the Cardinals will be able to make some field goals late in games. He's got a few game winners in his career. So that's good. And secondly, you hope that this is a sign that the Cardinals offense, Cliff Kingsbury's got it moving in the right direction in year 3. And hopefully, they can win some games because the first 2 years, I would say, of the Cliff experiment have been a little up and down. Kyler Murray looked like a potential MVP through 8 games last season, and then the last 8 games, not so much. So we got to figure that out. I know there was probably some injury there with Kyler as well. I believe there was like maybe a throwing shoulder injury or some sort of throwing injury. So I'm sure there were a lot of factors into that second 8 weeks, but his rookie year started hot, cooled down in the second half. Year 2 saw the same thing. So don't want that to happen in year 3.
And let's not mistake this Cowboys and Cardinals game for being the only close preseason game of this past weekend. I mean, we could have talked about the Panthers Colts. We could have talked about the Bills Lions. We could have talked about the Saints Ravens, even. We could have talked about the Chiefs 49ers. Plenty of these games were within a few points. Pretty indicative of how a lot of games end up coming up to this 3.5 point margin in the NFL. That's kind of the key number in a lot of cases, but we'll jump into the NFL a little bit more in a second, Brett. Today's episode is brought to you by DB. DB is a Scandinavian brand that makes backpacks and bags to help people on the move stay ready for anything. From the streets to the peaks, DB's gear is travel tested for some of the world's best athletes, adventurers, and creators. Over the past decade, DB has designed and developed, released, and refined the best bags in the market. With DB's patented hookup system, you are able to attach smaller products to your backpack, roller, or tote. I can't stress enough how important it is to find the right luggage for every travel scenario. We are teaming up with DB to exclusively offer our listeners 10% off our next purchase by using the code POD10 or going to the link in our show description. DB, it's time to move on, time to get going. And Brett, I said we were going to jump into some NFL, but first, let's talk about the NBA news because there was some breaking news shortly before we hopped onto our podcast. A trade between the Clippers and the Grizzlies. Pat Beverly, Rajon Rondo, and Oturu to the Grizzlies for just Eric Bledsoe. My first impression of this is I think the Memphis Grizzlies win. However, Woj was quick to note in a tweet that the Grizzlies roster is pretty maxed out at this point. They are far from being done with some moves and trying to move some pieces and get the salary cap the way they want it. But does this mean anything for the Western Conference odds? I mean, the Clippers plus 1,000 value, Grizzlies plus 5,000 value. Does this move mean anything enough for either of these teams to really be putting them in contention with the Lakers or the Warriors or the Suns that we're really seeing in the top three?
No.
I don't think so either, but the
Yeah.
question's worth asking, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm not gonna bet them, either of these teams. I like what the Grizzlies are doing. Pat Beverly is probably a better backup one than anything the Grizzlies have right now. Um, but yeah, I mean, this deal doesn't really move the needle for me. So it is what it is. Maybe the Clippers, get a better player with some. Probably shoots a little bit better than Pat Beverly and definitely Rajon Rondo. So maybe Eric Bledsoe adds slightly more shooting, but that's not really his role either. So just like kind of shuffling the deck a little bit.
Well, maybe there's a different scenario that moves the needle a little more, Brett. On the East Coast, we have two trades that were trying to happen but still haven't been completed yet. They were announced the day of the day of free agency starting, the day that they could be announced at 6:01 p.m. These were announced. Lonzo Ball still isn't a Chicago Bull. Kyle Lowry is still not a part of the Miami Heat. It's interesting because there's rumors of maybe tampering consequences to some of these teams, but we don't know what that means. If are these trades going to be declined? Is it just going to be forfeiting of a pick and a fine? I mean, it's really up in the air, but the NBA seems to want to crack down on tampering like this, right?
Well, I'm not really sure what not you specifically, but what it means by saying uh, Kyle Lowry's still not on the Heat because Precious Achua is playing for the Raptors Summer League. So the trade's done for all intents and purposes. Like, I mean,
That's a great point to
he
make.
can't go back. So I don't know where that information came from. Obviously, it's not from you, but
Yeah,
I mean, the trade's done. So I don't really know. I mean, maybe they lose a second round pick. It's kind of a big deal. Second round picks, oftentimes can become role players. Occasionally, you get a Hall of Famer, a Manu Ginobili, or a really good player like a Chris Middleton. But more often than not, you can develop a role player from the second round, and you need those guys, especially on good competitive teams. But I mean, the trades are going through. Like, Lowry's going to be playing for the Heat this year, and Lonzo Ball will be a Chicago Bull. Higgins, that I am sure of.
Yes, but just for clarity, I'm not pulling this out of my ass. The
No,
NBA
no,
no,
no.
I
Yeah.
know you're not claiming that of me, but just to clarify for the listeners that are unfamiliar of the situation, the NBA has opened an investigation into these trades of Lonzo Ball going to the Chicago Bulls and Kyle Lowry going to the Miami Heat. Whether that means these trades get stopped by any means, I don't necessarily think they do or not. You make a great point of the fact that Precious Achiuwa is already playing for the Raptors summer league team. That's a fantastic point to make, actually. But it's worth noting because this is going to have a consequence of some some extent if it turns out to be true that there was tampering. And when you have these announcements at 6:01 p.m. when free agency formally opens at 6 o'clock p.m., it's hard to argue that a full trade can be negotiated and agreed upon in 60 seconds. So I personally see tampering charges being likely accused or upheld by the NBA just because of how quickly these deals came to be. But I don't know the extent of what these penalties are going to be, and that's what's interesting to me. That's what's interesting.
Yeah, no, I don't know what the penalties will be. You mentioned the Bucks got fined a second round pick, so I'm going off that and saying maybe that's the case here. But I think when it comes to where the players will be suiting up, they will be the Lonzo Ball. I expect to be, in Chicago, and Kyle Lowry. I expect to be in Miami.
I would agree with that as well. Brett, let's jump into some NFL now and talk about some preseason week one thoughts because we got some looks at some rookies. I don't know. Justin Fields looked fantastic in Chicago. Trey Lance has a lot of people out on the West Coast talking for the 49ers, has local sports radio hosts even saying, why even start Jimmy G at all? Just go straight to Trey Lance. So it's going to be interesting, this rookie of the year race, I think, because if we might have a few quarterbacks to start in week one, which might not make this race as clear cut as was initially pictured by some people.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think Trey Lance and Justin Fields both put good tape out there. Showed they can do some things. Justin Fields showed an ability to create plays after the initial play breaks down. He had a rushing touchdown. Trey Lance, a long, deep passing touchdown over the top of the defense. Trey Lance's completion percentage wasn't so great, though, so I'd be a little concerned about that. No interceptions, though, which is a Trey Lance staple. Guy never throws any picks. So, you're excited to see that they played well. Zach Wilson, who's had up and down reports from training camp, played pretty well in his preseason limited snaps. So,
I'd say he played nice. He went 6 for 9 for 69 yards
yeah, see,
in
unfortunately,
the
I
first
think it's
half at least. In the first
61
half at least.
yards.
Oh, 63, 63. They did change it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Live on the broadcast though at halftime they said 6 for 9, 69 yards. That was a pretty good way for Zach Wilson to start his career for the Jets, even though his BYU compatriots might not be so happy with the numbers.
yeah, but he played okay. I thought Mac Jones played really well. Mac Jones is another one. Higgins, he might beat out Cam Newton, so it'll be very interesting to watch.
And then the other name that's also in the mix is Najee Harris and Jamar Chase. I mean, Mac Jones is listed in the same odds of plus 1,000 with Jamar Chase, but Najee Harris, at least in Oregon, he's plus 800 odds for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which, I mean, if they go to the traditional Steel Curtain, have the hard nosed running game that they tried to have with Jerome Bettis, Deuce Staley, and then they kind of lost way with that for a little bit. If they can bring that back and Najee Harris becomes their workhorse, you can absolutely make a case for a running back winning that as well. But it's going to be hard when you have 3, 4 quarterbacks to compete against. It could be very interesting, that Rookie of the Year race for sure.
Yeah, definitely one to watch throughout the season.
And there is one other NFL record that I kind of had a thought about on Saturday night, Brett. The single season passing yards record. If you take a look at it, I think there is an argument that it could be broken. I mean, the passing yards record, it's been broken a few times in recent years. Jameis Winston just 2 years ago came actually pretty close to breaking it. And with an offensive coach like Sean Payton, now he's not going to have Michael Thomas as his leading receiver, which definitely hurts his potential to do it this year. But Jameis Winston with the New Orleans Saints has the potential to break this. And at plus 5,000 odds to be the passing yards regular season leader, at least that's what he is listed at in Oregon, he's behind a lot of names, Brett. And just overall, when we're talking about the passing yards record being broken, Oregon has a line out for that. And it's actually the most fair odds of any record being broken of the four that they list. They list passing, rushing, receiving, and then rushing and receiving yards record. And the passing yards record is, if you think it's going to be broken, it's plus 190. Anything else is plus 350 or higher for those other three records, and one of them's plus 1200, so it's just, those are unlikely. The passing yards record, though, I think it's plausible. I think it's plausible. Am I talking out of my ass here, Brett, or am I making some sense?
You're half talking out of your ass. So you're betting on a quarterback, or your thesis here is Jameis Winston to break the passing yard record. And I think you're right. I think with the 17th game, the passing yard record has a very good chance of being broken this year. I'd even say the plus 190 is a good bet, and you should go ahead and make that. Now, where I'm going to call you an idiot is picking a quarterback that didn't even start his team's first preseason game.
That's fair.
I mean, how the hell you're going to convince me to bet plus 5,000 on a guy that, as of week one of the preseason, is not his team starting quarterback to break this record? I mean, that seems insane. But if you want to tell me the record's going to be broken, Higgin, with the extra game in a pass-happy league like you stated, I totally believe that. Jameis isn't the guy to do it, though.
So the reason I bring up Jameis Winston is because he has the 8th highest single season passing yards number of all time. Now, you make a good point of, I may be jumping the gun a little bit with naming him like this, but with 17, with an extra game being added in, I think that's a fantastic point of maybe Aaron Rodgers, maybe Tom Brady, who's the only other name in this top 10. Patrick Mahomes is 9th, right behind Jameis Winston. But Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Jameis Winston, maybe Aaron Rodgers?
I mean,
I think that's 4 names.
That's not really how I'd handicap it. I'd look at schedules. I'd look at teams that are going to be competing, that are going to need to score point, like Dak Prescott, right? That's how I'd handicap it. Dallas is an offensive team. They're going to theoretically be in the chase for the NFC East. I don't know if they're the best team in the NFC East, but they're in that mix at the whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it the top, the middle.
Yeah, that's not the only way that I would handicap this, but one of the steps that I would do is I would look at the list or the records and say, okay, who's even come close? And right now, if you look at that top 10, you have Tom Brady at 3rd most. That was back in 2011, though. Can he do that 10 years later? I don't know. That's hard to do. Jameis Winston did it in 2019, but he has the 8th most. That was with a different team, though. Patrick Mahomes had the 9th most. That was in 2018. He's still a rather young quarterback growing into his position. Could he do it? Absolutely, potentially. But then other than that, I mean, you have Matthew Stafford at 12 and 13, but he's with a new team, a much older quarterback as well. I think it's definitely possible. I think that plus 190 is definitely worth taking, and I think actually you're right, Brett, live. I am going to take that right now. but I'm not going to take a specific name, at least at this point.
Yeah, I
But
think that's the
it's
play.
definitely worth looking at this passing yards record because with an extra game, a lot of these records are going to be up for debate.
Yeah, I totally think that's the play, Higgins. And I think, some names I would target. I'm not telling anyone to go bet these at the window right now. But some names I might target would be a Dak Prescott, who I think is going to be competing for a division title. Justin Herbert, maybe a team whose defense I'm a little unsure about, who's going to need to score a bunch of points to make a wild card. Maybe if I feel like the Seahawks or the Cardinals are going to be competing in the NFC West. Or maybe you believe in Matt Stafford. I don't know. But one of those teams in the NFC West that'll be competing for a wild card or for the NFC West title. Like, I think you have to look in divisions that we think are going to be very close at the top, or like a team that is clearly fighting for a wild card because the Chiefs are in their division. And you target some of those quarterbacks because every game is going to be so important, that at week 16, 15, 16, 17, when, it's kind of coming down to the inches here, they're still going to be fighting and those games will matter.
That's a great point as well. And right now in the preseason is a great time to just take a look at all of these futures markets at the books that you use. Try to find some value, try to see, and maybe make some predictions, maybe place some bets on some futures that you see having some good value in the preseason. But we got a long season ahead of us, that is for sure. Brett, before we get out of here, we have our Levy locks and pick of the pods to talk about. I won my pick of the pod last episode, so we're going to jump right back into it. And I am going to talk about the Tampa Bay Rays and the Baltimore Orioles again. The Rays are one of the better teams against the run line in the MLB, and the Baltimore Orioles are the second worst team in the MLB against the run line. So I'm taking the Tampa Bay Rays minus 1.5 at plus 115. Let's not forget Baltimore has not won on a run line in the past 10 games. I understand the Rays are going to have a bullpen day with Colin McHugh on the mound. I'm not too worried, though. He is familiar with the Baltimore hitters. He does know how to pitch them a little bit. And overall, the Rays at home, they're 35-22 on the run line. So, I just like them to try to continue staying atop the AL East. How about you with your Levy lock?
Yeah, it feels like your saving grace there too. Is unfortunately for my guy Matt Harvey, it's not been his best year. But
No, he's 6-11 with an ERA north of 6. It's been a
yeah,
rough go.
yeah. So I think Tampa might get a few runs across in that one. Meanwhile, I'm going to the White Sox money line against the Oakland Athletics. You pointed out that there was line movement already in the recording of this podcast, but the real reason, the thing that drew me to it, is Jake beat me to the rundown tonight, everyone. He got in the Oregon lines, and when I looked at the New Jersey lines, I saw a big mistake. Uh, the White Sox minus 116 in New Jersey at the time I placed my bet. The White Sox plus 100 in Oregon. I have to beat the books, Higgins, and it's my only baseball bet. I have not been doing so hot in baseball, focusing a lot of my time on the upcoming football and fantasy football season. It's going to be a great year for us, Higgins. We're really excited about it. Started the preseason 2-0, so unfortunately, my baseball handicapping plummeted quite a bit this summer, so I'm a little hesitant to pull the trigger. But when you see value like that, you know you got to pull it.
Well, it's okay. My MLB record's been carrying us a little bit. 36, 21, and 4. So I've been doing well enough for both of us. But yeah, I agree that value was definitely there. You made the right call because it already moved a nickel, minus 105 on each side now. Very interesting. These are not the only picks that we will have. Brett, we could have talked about the Red Sox Yankees series that's starting on Tuesday because Oregon has lines out for that as well. I felt like we didn't even have to discuss it though. So we will have some picks coming out on our social media before our next episode at NBB Pod on Twitter, at Next Best Bet on Instagram, and the Next Best Bet Facebook page and YouTube channel. This has been episode 158 of the Next Best Bet. For Brett, I'm Jake. We'll talk to you again on Thursday.